Welcome everyone to today's session on how to build your career in learning and development and training coaching. So we have two great speakers with us today. We have Achala Bhat and Namitha Vijayakumar. Welcome both of you. Thank you so much for making time for this. And super excited for today's session because we've been thinking about doing something related to L&D for a very long time now. We haven't actually done one yet. We did something related to skills one with Achala, I remember last year, but that was very focused on how anybody from any space can think about future proofing themselves. This one is slightly different because we are going meta at some level, right? We are helping people not just learn, but become learning and development professionals, right? So that's something that we have had a lot of interest and demand in for the last couple of months, and it seems like there has been a trend where people are looking to not just upskill themselves, but figure out a way where they can help their teams, their organizations, their communities become better equipped to manage things at work and in their personal lives as well. And I think one of the reasons for this is there's just so much change everywhere if you think about it, right? There is a lot of change that people are tackling at work. There's a lot of change people are tackling at personal level as well. And dealing with this change requires new types of behaviors, new types of mindsets, new types of skills. And because of that, I think, L&D as a space has been becoming more and more, I would say, gravitational, more and more just impactful. And I think that's why we are seeing so much interest here. So that as context, I would just share a bit about myself, and then I would turn it over to Achala and Namitha as well to tell us a bit about their journey so far. So for those who don't know, my name is Arjun, and I'm the founder of Pivot, which is a startup that helps people make career transitions. So if you're thinking about any sort of a transition, whether it's domain-oriented transition or industry-specific transition, or even you're just trying to move up in the career ladder from IC to manager or leadership role, these are some of the inflection points where we come in and we help you land your target role. Now, we'll share more about Pivot during the course of the conversation, but I don't want to hog too much light here, so I want to turn it over to Namitha first. Namitha, since you're on my screen, I would love to have you just share a bit about your journey so that people understand the kind of career you've had so far.
Thanks, Arjun, and thank you for having me here on this discussion. And very happy and proud to be a part of the Pivot family and on the mentorship board for quite some time. My name is Namitha, and I'm the founder of Beyond Walls Learning Solutions. This is my second venture. Earlier, I co-founded Learning Ethos, and this is my brand new company that I started. In fact, this is the first event that I'm attending since its inception of Beyond Walls. Beyond Walls is all about offering game-based and gamified learning solutions for upskilling to corporates and for employees. Talking about my career journey so far, I'm a hardcore techie. I mean, I started my career as an engineer, a software engineer, like most of you all. And because of my core interest and my passion in facilitation, training, and development, I made a career switch from a hardcore tech domain to something as non-technical as delivering leadership development trainings, campus to corporate trainings, etc. I was a part of Wipro Technologies at that point of time, and I was, I should say, fortunate to be a part of such a big organization which had a very strong in-house L&D team, which kind of helped me segue my career from without having any background in or any MBA or any of background in people management or HR or learning and development. I transitioned into L&D. It was not an easy transition. It's just one sentence for me today, but it took me 3 years for that transition. But plus an MBA from IIM Calcutta to kind of move from a hardcore tech background to L&D. But that happened eventually, and ever since, there's been no looking back. So that's a little bit about me.
Perfect. That was great. I'm sure we'll dive deep into, all of those inflection points you had in your career and, how you got into L&D. But Achala, I see you're here as well. You have, been here with us before. So thank you again for making time for this and really excited to have you. Please go ahead and share your background as well.
Sure. Really glad to be back on the webinar platform of Pivot. And on the other side, I also happen to have the good fortune of being on the mentor pool of Pivot. And it's an amazing team for any of you considering any sort of career transition, and much needed and much spoken of in today's context. I happen to be a software engineer as well. Started that way, and in fact, worked 2 years as a developer with TCS. No regrets. I think was very, very privileged to start my corporate journey with a firm like TCS, which stood up for such inspiring values for all of us in this country, and then pursued my MBA in HR and eventually moved on to the field of human resources. And I've played gamut of roles in HR, and as we speak, I know the last time I came on to webinar, I was a hardcore L&D professional, and today I'm a part of a different function in HR, that's employee experience, dealing with DEI, employee wellness, employee engagement, CSR, ESG, and engagement, and a whole lot of other stuffs. But which also means to say that over the course of my career, I've played roughly five functional roles in HR, starting from HR business partner to talent development or organization development, followed by learning and development, and now with employee experience. I think out of all the roles that I played, learning and development was the one which truly gifted me a lot of skills in addition to the core role specific skills, be it project management, be it stakeholder management, and so on. I'll possibly cover during the discussion. But that's from a professional standpoint. Aside of my work, and this kind of also aligns to my field of work, I'm also a keynote speaker at various forums, educational institutions, and conferences for the last 5 years, and been a public speaker for a decade, more than a decade. So that's a little bit about me.
All right, amazing. Thank you for sharing that background. I think it will help people contextualize whatever you share with regard to your experiences better. It's interesting that, all three of us have had certain types of career transition. So I think that just shows that, career transitions are considered as, very rare occasions. Generally, if you look at it at a broad level, and companies seem to be always against people who are trying to make changes or have non-linear career paths. And I'm sure it took all of us, like Namitha, you mentioned it took you almost 3 years, even though you can condense it into just one sentence today. It took us a lot of time and effort to get there. But before we just dive into this topic on L&D, I wanted to kind of just make a note of it for myself and for the others in the room that career transitions are happening all the time around you. If you really take a look at people's journeys around you, and you just have to think about what works best for you rather than trying to fit into the society's norms or the work norms, so to speak, because there are plenty of incidents that we have come across where people have made very ambitious transitions. So just want to set that as a context as we dive into this topic. All right, so let's get into it. I think we have a lot to cover. What we'll do to structure today is firstly just discuss some of the key trends that we have been noticing and speaking with people who come to our platform, thinking about becoming either a L&D professional or, let's say, related career like a trainer or a coach. And I'm sure, Achala, both you and Namitha have spent quite a bit of time with mentees on our platform as well as perhaps outside, helping them figure out what all needs to be done. So there's a lot of ground to cover. What I really want to just start with and maybe just set the stage here for is know more about what kind of L&D roles really exist in the market today, because it could be just one role, which is an L&D professional who helps their teams get better skilled at whatever skills they need for performing their job better. If it's as simple as that, you can say that. But to a layman, to somebody who has not always been in L&D, I think it would be good to start with just the fundamentals, right? So, Namitha, actually, it would be good to just have your thoughts on this first, if it's okay with you. What are some of the basic roles and career trajectories one can think of when we think of L&D?
Yeah, Arjun, as you said, L&D is a kind of a wide spectrum umbrella term, right? Within L&D, we have various functions. So, based on your interests, those of you who want to transition into L&D, you can look at what are your interests, what are your strengths, and what are your personality types, and try to leverage all these three to understand which is the best suited option for you within L&D. So, in L&D, we could have instructional designer, content creator, you could be a facilitator, you could be a coach. And each of these things requires a different flair or a different competency. Coaching and facilitation are often used hand in hand, but according to me, it requires two different kind of competencies. One is one-to-one coaching, and facilitation is one-to-many. So based on your personality type and your strengths and your competencies, and of course your interest and passion, you can choose whether you want to be in facilitation or would you want to be a coach or would you like to dabble between the two if that's possible. Or is content creation your cup of tea? If that's your passion, if some people would like to just go into their den, come up with creative ideas and create mesmerizing content, effective content for a learning objective. So if that's something that you are keen on, you can try instructional design. So content creation, facilitation, coaching is one part. But that's not it, right? You also have employee experience, employee, like something like what Achala might be doing. And talent engagement, employee engagement, evaluation, training needs analysis. These are all depending on the how big your company is and how big the businesses are. You could have specialized domains for each one of these. In smaller organizations, you will find that HR and L&D does the same role, or whatever I've spoken about so far about different aspects of L&D will be clubbed under one role. So again, there's no defined way in which it can be siloed or bucketed, but in general, based on your interest and aspirations, you can choose between these different options.
Right. That's helpful. I think it tells us that it's not just one size fit all kind of a role. It can vary depending on the organization, depending on the setting, but there are different types of options that you can pursue and utilize different skill set, even as an L&D professional yourself. Okay. So Achala, Namitha already talked a bit about the different types of roles that exist there, right? Now, a similar question, but in a rephrased manner. Let's say I am somebody who is considering L&D training coaching as a professional career for myself. And, I may have some background in HR, but not necessarily L&D, or maybe I don't even have much experience in HR, right? How would I, use some structured thinking to make a decision as to L&D is good for me as a potential role? And if so, what kind of roles from the ones that Namitha has shared should be the right one for me?
Sure. I think I'll add a filter to this question that you just asked, and the filter would be at what juncture in terms of work experience or career journey someone is at. And that's the question one should ask themselves to start with. And while I'm not a huge fan of how many years of corporate experience really matters, the reason I'm calling this out as a first filter is because even in the L&D roles, which Namitha kind of just listed out, there are junctures which, if looked at as foundational, intermediary, and at expert level, it just makes your journey as an L&D professional more comprehensive and also very seamless, because step by step you'll be building those skills. So with that filter is what I'll try to address the question that you asked. Say if you're at a career journey where you're in a corporate work experience of 1 to 5 years, couple of things to consider and ask yourself if L&D entices you. One is, do you enjoy facilitation? And this is a very important question to ask because public speaking is different from facilitation. And because I also come from this field of public speaking, and there are a lot of people who are public speakers in my circle also and who do kind of ask these questions. Facilitation is very different from public speaking. And we can really go on for a different session on addressing how it is different, or I can possibly address that offline if someone's interested. But if the answer is yes, then to start with, and if you're in that career journey, three kinds of L&D roles could be suitable for you. One is, which is pure play facilitation. If you pick that role up at that career juncture, it will help you build a lot of skills, a lot of learner knowledge. You will be able to really interact with different kinds of learners, adapt your styles to them, and it will give you that rough ground to build yourself as a ACE facilitator and eventually move into coaching, which I'll shortly address at which juncture it comes in. The second role at that level, at that career juncture, could be that of a learning coordinator. And in terms of learning coordinator, it's usually scheduling trainings, training evaluation, evaluating if a training has been good or not, trying to really build the ecosystem for learning, setting up systems for learning and development, and so on. And the reason this is a very crucial and a very knowledgeable role is because it will help you understand every phase of a learning journey, every phase of a learning and development. The third kind of role at that juncture you might want to explore and see if you're suitable for it is instructional designing. And if you're someone who has an inclination towards design, if you think you're creative, if you think you have a knack for understanding what would create an engaging content, if you write fabulous LinkedIn posts which get a lot of traction, it just shows that you have that inclination towards understanding audience, which means that you also have you have the skill to become a good instructional designer. So these are the three kinds of roles at that career juncture you might want to reflect if you're suitable for, or if that's something interests you. At an intermediary stage, which is at a mid-senior level, say work experience of 6 years and above, two kinds of roles in terms of learning and development. One is being a strategic learning business partner. And from that perspective, you're really interacting with the business stakeholders, trying to understand the business, trying to gather more knowledge about the learning landscape in that organization, trying to understand the industry. And as you can imagine, a bit of a corporate experience is needed for that, for someone to be able to explore that role. And the second aspect at that career juncture, of course, is what Namitha mentioned, is coaching. And in terms of coaching, again, I believe we all kind of informally coach day in and day out in our lives, but coaching at work and coaching from a corporate setup is very different. There is of course, I'm sure a lot of you could be aware, and maybe possibly some of you have that certification, ICF, or there are facilitating coaching, certifications to facilitate that particular skill. So these two aspects, and I wouldn't really specifically call out any roles for an expert or, at a career juncture of more than, say, 2 decades plus of work experience. But what is upcoming over there is really the establishing of tech academies at organizations. As you were mentioning, Arjun, at the beginning of this discussion, with the advent of with the very rapid proliferation of technology and the technical skills, and every day, I think just 2-3 months back, it was Gen AI, which everyone was speaking of, and we have come up with an iteration for that as well. Now it's changing so rapidly that it's difficult to even keep pace with, which means that tech academies will take a forefront. And at that corporate level of experience, I think a very good L&D role could also be really project managing or leading tech, establishing and governing those tech academies for organizations, because every organization is investing in them today. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that was very comprehensive and very well structured as well, Achala. I think anybody who's thinking about, this particular field can gather a lot of insights from that. I think the way I gathered your answer was that it again depends on which phase of your career you are, as to how you should think about landing an L&D role, or thinking about which one would be a good fit for you. Just in the interest of time, I do want to cover a couple of important points, and then also just want to let people know that we'll be taking up questions very soon with Achala and Namitha. So do share them in the chat section here. I see a few of them already coming in. So yes, please hang in there. We will definitely take them up soon. The next thing that I want to quickly segue into, and I think Achala, you set the stage for it. Namitha, I would like to get your thoughts. What are some of the biggest trends you are seeing from an L&D perspective that are impacting the shape and the landscape of L&D as a as an industry or as a domain, where you feel it will impact not only the workforce, meaning how workforce is learned, but even the L&D professionals' own career journeys or the skill sets that they need to be able to do justice to their role.
Great question, Arjun. And I think recently I read this message written by Satya Nadella to Microsoft stakeholders, in which he says that the most scarce, perhaps the most scarce commodity that we're going to see in the planet Earth is going to be human attention. So the attention span is dwindling. We are talking about when the attention span of Gen Z is lesser than that of the Instagram Reels. Right. So that should be, I mean, if you're talking about future trends of L&D, something that some learning solutions like micro learning, learning nuggets, personalization of learning, gamified learning, game-based learning solutions. These are some of the trends that I'm seeing coming up just to make sure that, this dwindling attention span is taken care of, and learners are engaged during the in any kind of intervention, be it classroom, virtual, any kind of learning intervention. This is, I think, one of the top trends that I'm seeing. With AI and Gen AI and artificial intelligence, large language models coming in, I think personalization of learning is taking a big role now in today's times. So these are the couple of trends. More experiential learning, I think, from the time we've come into L&D, which is almost a decade back, to where we are in the last 1 decade, I've seen a major shift in the way learning is experienced by the learners, from a more conceptual framework, management framework, philosophies, and trainer-led or PPT-led style of learning to a more learner-centric style of learning, where learner is in the driver's seat of learning. I think that paradigm shift is what we are seeing, and I'm glad to see more and more technology being used. But at the same time, it's a little bit of paradox when it comes to technology in learning, where as e-learning and adoptability of e-learning in Indian culture is still not so great in terms of numbers, and that any kind of generative AI or AI applications makes use of that technology, whether it is e-learning or LMS or LXP. This is a paradox we need to address, because adoptability is a big issue that learning culture needs to be inculcated within every organization. Absolutely. And it needs to be led by the leaders themselves. A top-down push approach is no longer going to work. So that pull method of ensuring that continuous learning is made as a part and parcel of the culture of the organization, I think that's a shift we are looking towards.
Yeah, very well said. I think, there are so many different, trends that are impacting how L&D is shaping up. But I think the, attention economy, I think that's one of the biggest things that is definitely impacting this, and personalization, like you said. So many different things, but one of the things that a lot of people have been asking us, just because, it has taken over the world over the last year since OpenAI came with ChatGPT, is how AI is impacting even learning today, right? And obviously, they've recently released, I think, the latest model where, you can have voice related AI as well. But just want to, Achala, maybe bring you into the conversation on this specific point. What are your thoughts on specifically AI having an impact on L&D roles, and how professionals in this field should gear up to incorporate AI? Whether, let's say, there could be a learning coordinator or facilitator, there could be a coach, there could be an instructional designer. I think there might be a use case, there might be a potential to leverage AI in some form or fashion there, right? So, we used to think that this will be something that happens maybe towards the end of this decade, in 4 or 5 years, but it seems like it's happening, at least in the West, and very soon, hopefully in East as well. So what are your thoughts about that?
Sure. And I think The answer is just a disclaimer. It may not be so heartening, and while always a prominent question is that if AI would replace humans, or not just in the L&D space, across this question comes up. But I think as L&D professionals, a warning call over here is to really step up our game on how we can be truly strategic partners to the business and to the organizations that we are a part of. And I'll give you a very quick example on that. And you can Google out this particular company known as Arist. And Arist is just really one example which comes on top of my mind. There are many companies and industries which are working in this space. So Arist and similar other enterprises, they give you, if you just tell them, if you just write, say, I want to develop communication skills, it will give you a host and the list of the trainings with the links that you can go through from various sources, Coursera, LinkedIn Live, so on. In addition, it will also suggest you how you can get exposure to that, what possibly you will get to know from your coaches that you're working on, and so on. And also try to kind of connect you to the LinkedIn profiles of people who can guide you with. So my point over here is everything that you can know from someone, Arist is giving you served on the plate and within 5 minutes of just entering that data. So for example, if an organization really empanels a vendor partner like Arist, me as an L&D professional, I have to really up my game beyond suggesting what trainings and what on-the-job exposures I can get to become a better, get to really build that skill for our employees. So I would say in terms of how AI could, just one second, yeah. In terms of how AI could really influence the field of L&D is, yes, hyper-personalization of learning, because this is how vendor partners like Sana, Arist, Docebo, and others are working. In addition, a lot of schools and educational institutions, particularly in the West, are also leveraging AI to understand certain learner biases and behaviors. For example, if I have an assessment just before my examination, which tries to gauge my mood or tries to gauge my learning preferences in schools itself, it will try to suggest the subjects that I would possibly do better at, and a kind of guidance possibly all of us would have loved to have when all of us were in schools and not really have to go through the gist of career transitions. I'm sure you have these discussions day in and day out, Arjun, on how interests don't align with the career paths and so on. So that is one space I see AI disrupting, really assessing the emotional and the social inclination of students at educational institutions and suggesting them possibly what career path is applicable for them. The other aspect I also see is removal of bias, because in the particular instance that I mentioned, I might still be more comfortable sharing these details with an AI-powered assessment tool versus a particular human intervention that is possibly I'm interacting with. Also, another way I see AI disrupting the field of L&D is to make it more inclusive, specifically for the differently abled who are challenged either visually or from a listening point of view. This particular discussion, if AI powered, it could possibly, and just thinking aloud, maybe giving you some task for the next webinar, no pressure. How can this be more inclusive and powered by AI, where the subtitles are being shared dynamically, and also a word cloud of the questions that is coming here is coming in, and that really covers and extends the amount of learners that I can attend to. And the final point, I think leveraging AI in learning also brings in very rich data analysis of my learners beyond a Power BI and a Tableau can provide me with. And I think any HR professional for that matter is very powerful if they have access to very rich data analysis, which especially generative AI can help very soundly with. So I think these could be the disruptions.
Got it. I think a lot of your new potential with AI on the forefront here. And I think a lot for us to digest. And I think we were actually trying to make sure that the closed captioning was working. It wasn't, so now it is. Thanks for that reminder, Achala. Now, Actually, let's switch gears. I think, what we have been discussing so far are more macro level trends and, how people should think about structuring their career journeys within this space. I think there are a lot of professionals who have been trying to break into this field on their own as well, or trying to advance within the field as well, right? And I'm sure some of them are here with us. So for them, this is perhaps, good to know, and perhaps they have some good awareness here. But now when it comes to implementing certain steps to take their career to the next level, they're looking for very practical pointers, right? So let's talk about a couple of those topics, and then I think we have a few questions here, so I definitely want to take them on as well. Just so one of the most common questions that we get today is, how to land a job in this competitive market, right? That comes for obviously people from across different domains and industries. That's not just specific to L&D, I would say. But even when it comes to HR and L&D, there are plenty of people, who might have been on the other side of the hiring, table, in the sense they are making hiring decisions. But when they are thrust into the job market today because of either a layoff or because they're trying to make a transition into L&D, or become a coach and trainer. I think there's one question related to that in the chat here. So Namita, I know you are leading your own organization. You're an independent trainer as well. So perhaps I don't know how much exposure you have had in the recent past in terms of helping people navigate the job market per se. But do you feel when, let's say, an L&D professional is applying for a typical corporate role, either as, let's say, a coach or HRBP who is an L&D, what are some of the things they can do to really stand out from the market, from the crowd of competition they have today?
Yeah, I think I'll take a step back here, Arjun, from your question is, before you apply to a job role in L&D, you should be very clear about, I mean, this is something that I tell my mentees at whom I mentor at Pivot also, is that have the clarity on which role that you aspire for. So within L&D, there could be multiple roles as we discussed earlier. And having that clarity, meaning what I mean is, what is it that you're good at? What is it that you enjoy the most, and what do you think is there a need for? So simply put, it's the ikigai. It's the intersection of these three things. And if you can really find that ikigai, and you're for clear, that, okay, this is the role that I aspire to be in today, 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years down the line, then it becomes a lot more easy for you to land in that job. But many a times I have found when I mentor youngsters, especially, or initial few years in their career, and they have kind of worn out of a kind of a technical job or any kind of mundane job, and they see L&D as some glorious domain, and they want to experiment. And they're not clear about what kind of a role within L&D they would want. So I first asked them to have that clarity. That's the first thing you need to find out. So then the next question is, how do I have the clarity? I don't know if I make a good facilitator, make a good coach, or make a good instructional designer or a training coordinator. How do I know? My answer to that would be is to experiment. So most of the mentees at Pivot, or I'm sure who are attending this workshop today, are also having some job at a regular job at some company. I would say explore within your functional teams on what you can offer to your existing employer. That's how I started. When I was doing hardcore coding and hardcore tech job, and I decided, okay, I mean, it came my way and I had to do technical trainings. I was thrust into it in a way. But once I started doing technical trainings, this is where I realized my inclination, my interest towards this. So if you don't get an opportunity like that, if it's not thrust on you, then look out for that opportunities, maybe cross-functionally, offer that support, say that I would like to shadow, I would like to take a session or do some kind of a knowledge transfer within whatever levels you are permitted to do that within your current role, and try it out and see if that really fits you. So whether it's content design or instruction or facilitation or coaching, I would say give it a shot first to have that clarity on, okay, this is what I want. After which, of course, building a good resume and having a good LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn, when I was a freelance trainer for quite some time before I started my own venture, and I can really vouch for how much impact impact a good LinkedIn profile can have for landing you on a good job. So optimize your LinkedIn profile, do a little bit of search on understanding how to use the right keywords, make sure that you post regularly on LinkedIn, write posts in this field of interest or in the fields that you aspire to be in. So maintaining a good social media, especially LinkedIn profile, is really helpful. The other thing I would suggest is also attending small conferences, conclaves, not just for the sake of attending, but there are some communities, facilitation communities like International Association of Facilitators, L&D communities. In every city has an L&D community. In Bangalore itself, we have a couple of them. So they have these weekly conventions, weekly meetings. Go there, network with people, meet the right kind of people, because that connections, what connections can offer you, no kind of certifications or any kind of learning, any courses cannot offer that kind of a thrust on you. So I would say these three things is most important. Firstly, understand, have clarity on which is that role that you would want to aspire for. Once you have that clarity, volunteer for doing that within your circle of influence. Try it out and see if that's really your cup of tea and you're enjoying it and people are giving you good feedback. Then you take the next step, have a good LinkedIn profile, go out, meet people, make sure that you have the right connections. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. And Achala, any thoughts that you want to add on the same topic around, job search? I think Namitha really set the stage, right, in terms of understanding everything that you can do, whether it's resumes, your LinkedIn profile, interview prep, attending seminars and workshops. I think that's a good kind of broad overview. If I was to say, let's say, top 2 or 3 things, I don't usually, like asking these questions like top 1 thing or top 2 thing, because it kind of skews, the answers, because I know context matters. But generally speaking, if I was professional looking to land a role or advance my career in this field, what are your top 2 things that you would tell them to really look into, which most people don't do today?
Sure. I think completely agree with all the pointers that Namitha shared, and specifically on the social presence as well as learning from people aspect of it. I'll just add, in addition to aligning with all the pointers shared, adding a couple of pointers on some of these skills that aspirants could equip themselves with and learn, given that with an assumption that you have not played an L&D role earlier or have pursued an MBA in HR, where there is usually a topic on learning and development. With that context, what could aspirants do? I think first is for designing any learning intervention and in any organization, there is a certain life cycle that entire process goes through, and it's very conceptual. It's very easy. You can just pick a particular course on Coursera or even LinkedIn Learning, where there are very good courses on the basics of L&D processes, starting from requirements gathering to understanding, interaction, shortlisting vendors. And it's really a set process, but a knowledge of that would be really helpful in your conversations during interviews. The second skill that you can equip yourself is basics of facilitation. It's absolutely okay to say that I do not have a very extensive exposure to facilitation, because everyone in the industry understands that facilitation is a skill which is very less dependent on theory. It's very much on the job that facilitators learn on what's the right way of facilitation. But there are certain basic aspects and a basic element, so to say, on facilitation. And again, a lot of reputed companies as well as academies offer these courses, so you can equip yourself with that. And some of them are not very expensive either. The third thing that, there are total 4, and the penultimate part I would say is equip yourself with the knowledge of the industry where you're trying to look for a job. A lot of times while making career transition, I know we don't apply a filter of industry because we are more looking for a role. But if you do feel that you have a certain industry in your mind, I think it helps to understand the value chain of that industry and know more about that industry where you're exploring. And the final aspect I would say is, kind of latching onto my answer for one of the earlier questions, where instructional design as one of the roles in L&D, if you're looking to build your forte there, or if you're looking to venture into that space, have a concrete knowledge of, or at least 2 or 3 platforms where instructional design happens, because it's very tools and platform specific. So your knowledge of that platform would really help you pitch yourself that saying, hey, I'm an ID professional on this particular platform. Yeah.
Understood. Understood. All right. I think a lot of good wisdom there and a lot of practical pointers as well. One thing that I always highlight to people based on our experience today, and this really applies to something within the current job market, is that, a lot of people are applying traditional job search methods still because that's what they have done before, or that's what they have heard from their peers and colleagues with regard to just refresh your resume, align your resume with the JDs using the right keywords, and then start applying to jobs on the portals, and then keep applying as much as possible. You'll hear back within some time. It's really happening less and less today, right? Earlier, perhaps if you had a, 3 to 4% chance of landing your target role, today it's less than 2%, right? And that's only because of the nature of the job market. Not that something's necessarily wrong with your profile. It's just that there are a lot of candidates in the market looking for new roles, either because of the layoffs that have taken place over the last couple of years, or just because people's propensity to voluntarily make transitions has increased significantly in the last couple of years, right? So what is most important in today's market, and I think everything that Namitha and Achala shared goes to make the same point. It's that you can't just depend on average your traditional job search methods of refreshing resume, applying online, and hoping to hear back. You have to do these things that they're talking about, right? Understanding which role is important for you or right fit for you. Reaching out to folks in your network, joining the right communities and conferences, understanding whether there is a solid skill alignment with the target role, or if there is some sort of a gap that needs to be bridged. And then everything that they shared with regard to resume and LinkedIn profile and interview prep. And then finally, how you actually apply to the jobs. If you're just sending out a resume and hoping to hear back, might work, but in a lot of cases, if you want to maximize your chances, might have to showcase your skill, not just tell people that this is your achievement, but actually prove it time and time again to the employers and hiring managers that you have what it takes to be the best at this role. And you can do it through a portfolio. You can do it through a short assignment if they give it to you. There are many ways to showcase that. So I just wanted to summarize some of the key points that both Achala, you and Namitha have made here, because this is really important to the work we do today. And I want to make sure that people leave with certain level of insights and learnings from this session. So with that, let's turn it over to the questions. Sorry to keep people waiting. I know we build up the suspense here. There's a lot of good questions that we have. So one of the questions that we have is from Sunil Soni. Sunil, thanks for your question. He says that I'm an independent ICF PCC coach and I'm comfortable with my practice. I'm young and I want more exposure beyond my personal setup. Is there a way I can join a corporate or impanel myself in case I don't have a corporate background? Namitha, I think this is a perfect question for you, given that you have the experience of starting your own practice and also perhaps working with organizations. I don't know if you have been impaneled with corporates or not, but would love to hear your stance on this.
Oh, can I see the question somewhere? I lost you
It's
in
in the
between.
chat. If you just scroll up, I can also just copy paste it. Just give me 1 second. It'll come up at the bottom. Yeah, Sunil also just pasted it. So you can see it in the chat, I hope.
Okay, so Sunil, you are currently, if I understood you correctly, you are an independent ICC certified coach, and you are already coaching. Whom are you coaching? Who's your target audience, if I may ask? Are they corporate employees? Are they professionals?
I think he said MSMEs.
Okay. Okay, so you don't have a corporate experience, but you want to explore something beyond your current coaching practice. I will go back to my initial statement. You need to be a little more clear about what is it that you aspire to pursue, right? Is it Do you want to continue coaching? Is it facilitation that you're looking for? Is it content creation? Do share what is your interest and aspiration, where does that lie? And accordingly, I'll be able to guide you further. Coaching itself, okay. Maybe, okay. So you're already doing a coaching. I think you can, reach out to people in the corporate space who are looking for coaches. You can tie up with a lot of these training vendors who will look for coaches. So nowadays, blended learning journeys is also one of the key things. And blended learning would have some aspects of content creation, facilitation, micro learning, self-paced learning, as well as coaching to it. You can always look out for these training vendor partners or collaborators who look for coaches. How do you reach out to them? There are many platforms that you can use, like Order Trainings is one. There are many other. If you can Google and find out who are the training partners and collaborators who onboard coaches for independent consultation, you can try that as well. That would be a lot more easier than directly reaching out to corporates. That's what I feel.
Okay.
No, what I mean by blended, there's a follow-up question. I'll just answer that, Arjun. What are these blended learning journeys? Blended learning means that learning doesn't start and end with a workshop, a face-to-face classroom workshop. It could be, so for example, before coming for the workshop, there could be a pre-work that is shared as a learning nugget to you on a self-placed platform. So you finish that pre-work, there's also called as flipped classroom, where there is some amount of training content that is covered post the session or the session, before the session on a self-paced learning platform. There is live face-to-face sessions. There is some amount of peer-to-peer learning also that happens. So it's a blend of all of this. It's a blend of synchronous classroom sessions, self-paced learning, peer-to-peer learning as well. So that is what is called as blended learning journeys. It's called as journeys because it takes it's spanning a few months. So it's not just a 1 day or a 2-day intervention. It spans across few weeks or maybe few months as well. I hope I answered your question, Sunil.
Thank you, ma'am. And I don't know if I'm allowed here. I didn't know I could unmute, so I just discovered that. Arjun, can I take
Yes,
to ask
please,
just one
please
follow-up
go
question?
ahead, Sunil. Just in the interest of time, if you can be brief, that would be great.
Sure. So you mentioned order trainings and coaches for independent consultants, consultations. Is there any names of companies that you would that off the top of your head that you may recommend?
There are many. Maybe if you can connect with me, I can suggest a few collaborators, training vendor partners who empanel coaches for you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Sunil, feel free to check out our platform where you can also connect directly with both Namitha and Achala and do it in a structured way where, they would be much more efficient, in terms of how you reach out and how you gain insights from them. So I believe my colleague Manjari has shared a bit in the chat section. Feel free to check out Pivot, which is mypivot.work, and reach out to Namitha and Achala there. I'll go to the next question, and I believe this one is from Palak. So Palak's question is, for both the speakers, I think Achala, perhaps you can take a stab at this one, which is, what is the scope of L&D for a chartered accountant, so CA, who has primarily worked in tax and regulatory advisory? I actually think this is a really good question, Achala, because even though it's very specific to CA, I feel there are people from so many different backgrounds, as I was mentioning earlier, who have very little to do with HR and L&D as a space, but they have a very strong interest, because a lot of times people love to learn new things, and more than learning, they like to help others also get better at what they do. So training, coaching, like I think one of you was mentioning, is something a lot of people do organically, right? And I'm not sure if Palak's question is coming from that same place, but would love to hear your thoughts on how people who are from different backgrounds can consider L&D as a potential career for them.
Sure. And specifically, I'll try to address Palak's question. And and with a disclaimer that it truly applies to any other field also, which are very technically inclined. And by technically, I mean that they're very inclined to the subject matter expertise, like tax for Palak, and it could be a programming skill for someone else, or even a data science skill for a scientist. I think two areas where you can try to try to kind of transition into L&D space to start with. One is try to be a part of project managing, or if there is a team already at your organization, which is sort of looking at building these stack specific technical skills for the cohort. A lot of learning business partners work very actively with learning champions from the businesses to try and build this setup, because we as learning business partners, we may not have the knowledge of tax concepts and the subjects in tax for that matter. I still remember in one of my previous organization, I really had to equip myself with the knowledge of the whole gamut of tax, because I was in some capacity supporting tax learning as well. And I happened to be a science student, like I was saying. So, and this is a very commerce domain. So, which means that even the other way around is true for you, Palak, in the sense that you can try to be a part of the project management, or really try to run that endeavor of technical learning for your team, or you can even extend to the larger teams, which is nothing but really the tech academies, which I was speaking earlier. That's one aspect. The second aspect would be the facilitation skill part of it. And while I'm sure if you would have had an exposure to training these particular technical skills to a set of people, or to new joiners, you can try to build further expertise in it by taking a basic facilitation course. And there are many options available, but the reputed ones coming from any of the reputed organization or the facilitation, like the Dale Carnegie, or and there are really a lot of options that you would get. Even a simple Google will help you with these options. But if you can get that course and a certification for yourself, this will further build and also on paper give you that credibility. You are indeed certified in basics facilitation course, and you can try facilitating some of these topics to, again, starting with your teams and further extend it, which is also a foray into L&D. So I think these two are very strong forays into L&D. And if you ask me, you're very close to getting into the space of L&D and make that career transition, because I've personally known a lot of people who have been auditors, who have been tax specialists and so on, and then ventured into L&D. And these were the two very strong forays that each of them had really adopted for.
All right, great. Palak, I hope that was helpful. And, I definitely do feel that people, like Achala said, from various backgrounds can definitely consider a career in L&D. It might take time to figure things out, but, if you work with somebody who has done it, or who has been at least able to crack an L&D role, I think especially somebody like Achala or Namitha, that can be very powerful in terms of helping you focus on the right action items and remove all the clutter that's out there. I do want to jump on to the next question here. And I believe there's a similar question down here. So Gurmeher has asked about what are some of the popular platforms in ID. I assume that it means instructional design. I'm not from the field, so don't understand the jargon always. But I think there's a similar question downwards from Rajiv. And his question is slightly different but related. He says, I have worked as a chemistry teacher in the coaching industry for the last 10 years. What are some of the transferable skills that one might talk about for L&D and ID careers? So, I mean, we could take them up separately, but I did feel that there might have been some interconnectedness given the focus on ID by both of the users, or sorry, both of the audience members. So Namitha, would you like to first take a stab at this, and then would love to get Achala's thoughts as well?
Yeah, so I'm not an instructional design person. I'm not a content person, but I'll still try to address this at maybe a high level. So when you talk about platforms, right, I think the first initial thing is to understand what you mean by instructional design, right? So there are various models like the ADDIE model, etc., which, as Achala was mentioning earlier, you will get a foundation course in many of these online learning platforms, be it Udemy, Coursera. You will find a foundations on instructional design course that is going to help you gain some insights on what ID really is. So once you finish that course and get a fair idea about what instructional design is all about, then I think you should dip your toes and get your hands dirty and try to experiment by creating some content, be it for learning, be it for leadership development, whatever is your field. So if, let's say, if you are doing it for students, somebody mentioned that they're a chemistry teacher. So can you design module for a teaching module for your students on chemistry and make it as interesting, as engaging as possible? Use all your creativity, use the different models that instructional design talks about. ADDIE model is just one of them. And also evaluate the effectiveness of the training using this. Again, instructional design also covers evaluation models, Kirkpatrick models, there are so and so forth. There are so many of them. So once you have a basic understanding, I think you should then go ahead and try it out. As I mentioned earlier, in your current sphere of influence, whatever, in your current possible work environment, what you can do with that newly attained skills, try it out first and see whether there has been an impact. Did your instructional design really move the needle? Did it create an impact? And that's what we all work towards, right? As L&D professionals, one of the things that motivates us and what drives us is that we are impacting lives in a positive way. So if you can see that impact unfolding in front of your eyes, that means you've got the game. So instead of going for any certifications, of course, certifications might get you a foot in the door, but beyond that, it's all about your hands-on experiential way in which you learn. So I think that is one part of ID that I would like to address. I think one of the other questions, Arjun, if you want to pass it on to Achala, you can do so, but I'll just answer this question where she said, what are the transferable skills? So when you are a teacher, you're already probably good at facing people, one-to-many skill that is required for facilitation. You naturally have a flair to it. So that is one transferable skill that I see in you. Good communication skill, you have that flair to connect with your students, which can be transferred in facilitation with your learners as well. Having said that, teaching is very different from facilitation. In fact, training is very different from facilitation, right? These are two different ball games. It's chalk and cheese for me. So you should understand that there is a difference between training, teaching, and facilitation. Again, basic courses will help you understand what facilitation really means, right? It's just about harnessing the group wisdom, collective wisdom, which is already there. It's not about teaching. It's not about preaching. So while there are transferable skills, it's important to understand how different they are and appreciate the difference as well.
All right. I think you covered a lot of ground there. Achala, we do have one more question, actually a couple more, but I think there's one more that I would definitely like to take up before we wrap up. And then I know we are running out of time, so perhaps that could be the last one. Does that sound good? Yeah? Okay. So I think the question is from Mohammed Mohsen, and his question is that he has been given the responsibility to set up an L&D department recently at his organization. It's a slightly open-ended question, but Achala, the question centered around what are some of the basics you should keep in mind to set up the function. He has some time for it, so he's saying he can go slow and build a strong foundation for his organization.
Sure. And I think you reworded it very aptly, Arjun, which is, what are some of the basics that you could keep in mind? Because answering this question is really, a day-long workshop possibly on how to set up an L&D function. But just touching upon some of the things to keep in mind while addressing this aspect, because that's one of the roles I played also. First and foremost, understand the learners or which in this case is all the employees in your organization that you're catering to. And by understanding, I imply is what is their educational background? What are the skills they already come from? What are the certifications they have? What do you feel that are the skills that they might require to excel not only in the company that they're in, but also as people who are excelling in that particular industry where this company is based? based out of. And it will be a combination of both what people will say that they want to develop for themselves, and one is whatever your observational insights would be of them. The second aspect or the second basics that you would have to keep in mind is really look at what the industry trends and what's happening in the other stalwarts of that industry. For example, just hypothetically assuming if it's a tech industry, look at what the Microsofts and the Googles and the Meta are doing in terms of building learning for that for their set of employees. And it will obviously not be a replica of that, but what can you do to be somewhere near and really have an L&D function for yourself, which is also in line with what the rest of the industry is doing. And third and foremost is you as an L&D leader for your organization, do equip yourself with two things. One is be a part of every strategic discussion possible in the organization. I think as L&D professionals, we end up being very reactive to the requirements. I think the idea here is to be proactive. Be a part of those strategic discussions where you will put across a point saying that, hey, I think this is something that L&D can address or cannot address, and so on. That is from a business perspective. And the second aspect is do stay one step ahead of what's happening in the industry. That is really foreseeing what are the skills that will come to fore, both in terms of soft as well as hard skills. And that will really help you as an L&D professional to craft those interventions or think of those interventions beforehand before they really hit the market. So I think these three basics should get you started.
Okay, amazing. I think that brings us to close of today's session. Lot of ground covered, lot of great insights. And what I liked was that we covered both the practical aspects as well as, just the macro things that are really shaping the landscape of this industry. So I've attended sessions which sometimes, focus on one or the other, but I think covering both can be very helpful so people can think macro and micro. But thank you so much, everybody, for attending today's session, taking time out on Thursday evening. And special thanks to Namitha, you and Achala. The amount of value you have created just through this one session, I think, is phenomenal. So kudos to both of you. Thank you so much.